99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
Dr. Ilara Vale was accustomed to the unusual. As one of the leading veterinarians specializing in exotic and endangered species, she had encountered everything from rare Amazonian frogs to genetically engineered predators from secret labs. Her clinic, a modern marvel hidden deep in the Colorado Rockies, was equipped to handle creatures that most people didn't even know existed. But even she wasn't prepared for the message that arrived one stormy night, as lightning crackled through the sky and the mountains echoed with thunder. Ilara was in her office finishing up the day's reports. Her long brown hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her green eyes were focused intently on the glowing screen in front of her. The rain pounded against the clinic's large windows, but inside, all was quiet except for the hum of the machines monitoring her patients. She had just started typing a note about a particularly stubborn Komodo dragon with an infected claw when her comms device emitted a sharp ping. Frowning, Ilara glanced at the device. It was an encrypted message marked with the highest level of clearance, something she had never seen before. Intrigued and a little apprehensive, she tapped the screen, and the message unfurled in front of her, glowing in the dim light. Emergency. Top-level clearance. Immediate transport required to Zycon 4. Alien Queen's beast in critical condition. Respond if willing. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Zycon 4. The name alone was enough to send a chill down her spine. The planet was the capital world of the Zilktor, one of the most advanced and enigmatic species in the galaxy. They were known for their fierce territoriality and their strict non-interference policies with other races. No human had ever been summoned to their homeworld, let alone to treat one of their sacred creatures. The Zilktor were legendary not just for their technological prowess, but also for their complex and rigid social hierarchy, at the top of which stood their queen, a being shrouded in myth and power. Rumors circulated about her cruelty, her strategic brilliance, and her devotion to the enormous, fearsome beasts that served as both her protectors and her companions. And now, one of those beasts was dying. Ilara's mind raced. This was more than just a medical case. It was a potential diplomatic incident. If the creature died, the repercussions could be catastrophic, possibly even leading to war between Earth and the Zilktor. But if she succeeded, the possibilities were staggering. She stood up, pacing the room, her mind a whirl of thoughts. There were 1,000 reasons to say no. The danger was immense, the pressure even greater, and the risks, both professional and personal, were off the charts. Yet there was something else. Something deeper that urged her to accept the challenge. It was the same instinct that had driven her to this field in the first place, the need to help, to solve the unsolvable, to save lives no matter how strange or dangerous. Ilara stopped pacing and looked out the window, watching the lightning flash across the sky. If not me, then who? She whispered to herself, the storm mirroring the turmoil in her mind. She had faced danger before, had put herself in harm's way to save animals that others deemed too far gone. But this was something entirely different. She turned back to the comms device, her decision made. With a steady hand, she typed her response. I accept. No sooner had she sent the message than the room around her seemed to hum with a strange energy. The lights flickered, and there was a soft, almost imperceptible vibration in the floor beneath her feet. Before she could react, the vibration intensified, and with a sudden sharp crack, the air in front of her split open. A sleek metallic transport pod materialized in the center of the room, its surface gleaming with an iridescent sheen. The design was unlike anything Ilara had ever seen, smooth, organic, almost alive. The door slid open soundlessly, revealing an interior that glowed with a soft white light. It was sterile, empty, and ominously inviting. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest. She grabbed her medical kit filled with the most advanced tools Earth had to offer, and took a deep breath. Time to see what I've gotten myself into, she muttered under her breath. With one last glance around her familiar clinic, she stepped into the pod. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, sealing her in. For a moment, everything was still. Then with a sudden lurch, the pod shot forward, accelerating at a speed that should have been impossible. Ilara stumbled but caught herself, feeling the world blur around her as the pod hurtled through space. The journey took only minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Ilara could feel the pod crossing vast distances, breaking through the fabric of space itself. The walls around her shimmered, as if reality itself was being bent and twisted to accommodate the journey. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the pod decelerated, coming to a smooth stop. The door slid open again, and Alara stepped out into a world that was nothing like Earth. The sky was a deep, mesmerizing violet, filled with strange floating orbs that pulsed with an eerie light. The air was thick, almost tangible, with a scent that was both sweet and metallic. The landscape was alien and beautiful, with towering crystalline structures that reflected the light in 1,000 colors. The ground beneath her feet was soft and slightly warm, like living clay. But Alara had no time to take in the scenery. 2 figures stood before her, tall and imposing, clad in silvery armor that shimmered with the same iridescent sheen as the transport pod. Their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets, and their eyes, if they had eyes, glowed faintly from within. Without a word, they motioned for her to follow. Alara nodded, clutching her medical kit, and fell into step behind them. They led her through a series of corridors, each one more elaborate and surreal than the last. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, shifting colors and patterns as they moved. Alara couldn't help but feel as if she were being watched, judged by the very environment around her. Finally, they arrived at a massive set of doors, carved with intricate symbols that seemed to dance and writhe as Alara looked at them. The doors swung open, revealing a grand chamber unlike anything Alara had ever seen. The chamber was vast, with a high domed ceiling that glowed with a soft golden light. The floor was made of a smooth glass-like substance that reflected everything in perfect detail. In the center of the room lay the beast. Grixanth, the creature that had brought Alara across the stars, was enormous, easily the size of a small aircraft. Its body was a terrifying yet beautiful blend of dragon and insectoid features, covered in iridescent scales that shimmered with every color imaginable. The wings folded against its back were delicate, almost translucent, yet powerful enough to lift its massive body. But despite its fearsome appearance, the beast was clearly suffering. Its breathing was labored, each exhale a painful rasp. Its eyes, once bright and fierce, were dull and clouded with pain. A dark, pulsating mass clung to its side, feeding off the creature's life force like a parasite. And standing beside the beast, regal and terrifying, was the Zilktor Queen. She was tall, her presence overwhelming. Her body was adorned with intricate armor that seemed to merge with her very skin, and her eyes, glowing with an unnatural cold light, locked onto Alara as she approached. There was an air of both beauty and menace about her, a sense of power that was palpable. Human, the Queen's voice echoed in Alara's mind, bypassing the need for spoken words. It was a voice that carried authority, strength, and an edge of warning. You are the one who has been summoned. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. The Queen's presence was almost unbearable, but she forced herself to stay calm, to focus on the creature lying before her. Yes, Your Majesty, she replied, her voice steady. I'm here to help your beast. The Queen's eyes narrowed, her gaze sharp and penetrating. This is Grixanth, my most trusted guardian and companion. It is dying, and all our efforts to save it have failed. If you fail as well, you shall not leave this world alive. Alara swallowed hard, but she didn't flinch. She had expected as much. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, but this was why she had come. Taking a deep breath, she knelt beside Grixanth and opened her medical kit. The beast's eyes flickered toward her, filled with a mixture of pain and hope. Alara gently touched its scales, feeling the heat of its body and the faint tremors that ran through it. I'll do everything I can, she whispered to the creature, more to reassure herself than anyone else. As she began her examination, Alara knew one thing for certain. This was going to be the most difficult and possibly the most important case of her life. Failure was not an option. But as she worked, her mind focused and her hands steady, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of something far greater than she had ever imagined. And somewhere deep within the heart of the Zilktor Palace, forces were already moving, setting the stage for events that would change the fate of not just Grixanth, but of 2 worlds forever. Dr. Alara Vale had always been driven by curiosity and an insatiable desire to solve the mysteries of life. As she knelt beside Grixanth, the enormous creature that lay gasping for breath, she felt both the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders and the thrill of the challenge before her. This wasn't just any creature. This was the guardian of an alien queen, a being whose existence was intertwined with the fate of an entire civilization. Failure would mean not just her death, but potentially the end of peaceful relations between Earth and the Zilktor. Alara's hands moved swiftly and methodically, her training kicking in as she conducted a preliminary examination. She scanned the beast with her advanced medical tools. analyzing every detail that her equipment could capture. The results were staggering and confusing. Grixanth's biology was a bizarre fusion of organic and biomechanical systems, something that defied the usual categories she was familiar with. The creature's blood wasn't quite liquid, and its internal organs seemed to operate on principles that mixed biology with machinery, pulsing with a rhythm that was almost musical in its complexity. Alara's scanner beeped, indicating an anomaly. She frowned and adjusted the settings, focusing on the dark, pulsating mass that clung to Grixanth's side. The mass was clearly the source of the problem, but it wasn't just any parasite. The more she studied it, the more she realized it was something far more sinister, something designed with terrifying precision. "This parasite," Alara muttered under her breath. "It's not natural. It's engineered." The queen, who had been watching in silence, stepped closer, her presence like a shadow looming over Alara. "Engineered by whom?" she demanded, her voice sharp, reverberating in Alara's mind. Alara glanced up, meeting the queen's glowing eyes. "I'm not sure yet, Your Majesty, but this is no ordinary parasite. It's attacking Grixanth's vital systems at an alarming rate, but more than that, it's adapting to every attempt I make to analyze it. It's almost as if it was designed to resist any form of medical treatment." The queen's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear perhaps, or maybe anger. "Our own scientists have tried and failed to remove it. Their methods only made it stronger. You must succeed where they could not." Alara nodded, though the task ahead felt daunting. She continued her examination, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle. The parasite's biochemical structure was like nothing she had ever seen, yet there were faint echoes of something familiar in its patterns. It reminded her of a case she had worked on years ago, an outbreak of a rare, aggressive microbe that had affected a population of Earth's endangered animals. The microbe had been resilient, nearly indestructible, but she had managed to find a solution by exploiting a specific vulnerability in its structure. Could the same principle apply here? As she pondered this, Alara became aware of another presence entering the chamber. She looked up to see a Zilktor male, taller and more slender than the queen, adorned in a robe covered with intricate symbols that seemed to shift and glow. His eyes, a deep, unsettling blue, locked onto her with intense curiosity. He was clearly a scientist, and from the way the queen deferred to him with a slight nod, Alara guessed that he was highly respected. The scientist moved closer, his gaze fixed on the parasite that was slowly killing Grixanth. "You are perceptive for a human," the scientist communicated telepathically, his voice smooth and devoid of emotion. "But perception alone will not save this creature. The parasite is the work of the Drakthir, a race that has been our enemy for millennia. They have always sought to undermine us with their biological weapons, and this abomination is one of their most insidious creations." Alara's heart skipped a beat. The Drakthir were a shadowy, almost mythical race in the galaxy, known for their advanced bioweapons and their deep hatred of the Zilktor. If this parasite was one of their creations, then it was designed with the sole purpose of killing creatures like Grixanth, beasts that were not just animals, but sacred symbols of the Zilktor's power. "Why didn't your own scientists treat it?" Alara asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "You must have more advanced technology than we do." The scientist's eyes darkened, his gaze cold. "We tried. Our technology accelerated the parasite's growth. It is as if it was created to counteract everything we know, everything we have. The Drakthir's malice knows no bounds." Alara absorbed this information, feeling the weight of the challenge pressing down on her. The Zilktor's advanced technology was useless against this enemy, and they had turned to her, a human from a relatively primitive planet, as their last hope. It was both a terrifying and humbling thought. She returned her focus to the parasite, studying its structure on her scanner. The biochemistry was unlike anything she had ever encountered, yet there was something oddly familiar about the way it functioned, as if it followed some twisted version of the natural laws she understood. And then it hit her. The key wasn't in fighting the parasite directly, but in finding a way to disrupt its life cycle, to outmaneuver it using something it wouldn't expect. "Alara," the queen's voice cut through her thoughts like a blade, sharp and filled with an unspoken threat. "Time is running out. Grixanth is weakening. If you have a solution, you must act now." Alara's mind raced. She had an idea, but it was dangerous and untested. She would need to synthesize a treatment that combined Earth's microbial life with something from the Zilktor, something that could invade the parasite's defenses without triggering its adaptive responses. It was a long shot, but it might just work. "I have a plan," Alara said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "But it's risky. I need to create a serum using Earth-based microbes, combined with a Zilktor catalyst. It's experimental and there's no guarantee it will work, but it's the best shot we have." The scientist exchanged a glance with the Queen, their silent communication impenetrable to Alara. After a tense moment, the Queen nodded, her decision made. "Do what you must, human," she commanded. "But remember, failure is not an option." Alara nodded, already calculating the precise combination of Earth bacteria and the Zilktor nanites she would need. She could feel the weight of the Queen's gaze on her, and the silent presence of the scientist as she began to work. The pressure was immense, but Alara had faced impossible odds before. This was just another challenge, albeit the most critical one of her career. She moved quickly, her hands a blur as she mixed the components in her portable synthesizer. The serum glowed faintly as it formed, a strange shimmering liquid that pulsed with an inner light. It was a gamble, but it was the only chance they had. As she prepared to inject the serum into Grixanth, Alara couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The parasite was reacting to her every move, as if it knew what she was about to do. She hesitated for the briefest of moments, feeling the full gravity of the situation. If she failed, it wouldn't just be her life on the line, it would be the life of this magnificent creature, and possibly the fate of her entire species. With a deep breath, Alara pushed the needle into Grixanth's main artery and injected the serum. The effect was immediate and violent. Grixanth convulsed, its massive body thrashing against the restraints. The parasite flared up, its dark tendrils expanding as it fought against the invading serum. Alara watched in horror as the beast let out a deep guttural roar, its eyes wide with pain. The chamber filled with a pulsating light as the parasite and the serum battled for control. Come on, Alara whispered under her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. She could see the parasite reacting, its structure destabilizing, but it wasn't enough. The serum was too slow, it needed more time. Human, the Queen's voice thundered in her mind, filled with a cold fury. You are out of time. Alara gritted her teeth, refusing to give up. It's working, she shouted back, her voice filled with determination. Just give it a little more time. Grixanth's thrashing began to slow, its breathing becoming more erratic. The parasite's hold on the creature seemed to waver, its dark mass flickering as if it were losing power. Alara watched the monitors, her breath caught in her throat. The serum was taking effect, but it was a race against time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the parasite's mass began to shrink. Its tendrils retracted, its dark energy dissipating into nothingness. Grixanth let out a final shuddering breath, its body trembling before it fell still. Alara's heart stopped. Had she been too late? Had the serum failed? Then, slowly, Grixanth's breathing returned to a steady, even rhythm. The creature's eyes, once clouded with pain, slowly opened, their clarity returning. The parasite was gone, eradicated by the serum. Grixanth was alive. Alara let out a shaky breath, her entire body sagging with relief. She had done it. Against all odds, she had saved the beast. She looked up at the Queen, who stood in stunned silence. The cold, imperious demeanor was gone, replaced by something akin to awe. You have succeeded, the Queen whispered, her voice soft, almost reverent. Alara managed a tired smile. Grixanth will need time to recover, but the worst is over. The parasite is gone. The Zilktor scientist stepped forward, his eyes filled with something Alara hadn't expected, respect. Your methods were unconventional but effective. You have done what we could not. The Queen nodded, her expression softening. You have earned our gratitude, human. You have saved not just a life but the hope of our people. Alara could hardly believe it. She had faced impossible odds and she had won. But as she looked at Grixanth, lying peacefully at last, she knew that this victory was only the beginning. There were still challenges ahead, recovery, diplomacy, and the ever-present shadow of the Drakthir. But for now, she had done the impossible, and that was enough. As she left the chamber, the weight of what she had accomplished began to sink in. She had crossed the galaxy, treated a creature beyond human comprehension, and lived to tell the tale. But more than that, she had forged a bond between two species, one that might just change the course of history. But Alara knew better than to rest on her laurels. The road ahead was still fraught with danger, and the mysteries of the Zilktor and the Drakthir were far from solved. but she was ready for whatever came next. After all, she was the Beast Whisperer, and no challenge was too great. The success of her initial efforts brought Alara a fleeting sense of relief, but she knew that the battle was far from over. Grixanth was stable for now, but the damage caused by the Drakthir parasite had left the beast weakened and vulnerable. The serum had eradicated the immediate threat, but the creature's body had been ravaged by the invasive organism, and it would take all of Alara's skill and ingenuity to ensure a full recovery. Alara spent the next several hours in a state of intense focus, working alongside the Zilktor scientist to monitor Grixanth's condition. The alien's name was Javik, and while his demeanor remained cool and detached, Alara could sense an undercurrent of anxiety in his telepathic communications. The fate of the beast was a matter of immense importance to the Zilktor, and by extension to their queen. Any misstep now could undo all the progress they had made. As she worked, Alara couldn't help but be struck by the stark contrast between the Zilktor's advanced technology and the simple, almost archaic methods she was using. The Zilktor had medical equipment that could map out the neural pathways of a creature's brain in seconds, nanites that could repair cellular damage at an atomic level, and yet none of it had been effective against the Drakthir parasite. It was a sobering reminder that even the most sophisticated technology had its limits. The hours stretched into the night cycle of Zyklon 4, and the Grand Chamber, once filled with the frantic energy of the battle for Grixanth's life, became eerily quiet. The Queen had left, her regal presence replaced by the quiet, methodical work of Alara and Javik. The only sounds were the soft hum of the alien machines and the rhythmic breathing of the recovering beast. Alara's exhaustion was starting to catch up with her, but she pushed it aside. There was still much to be done. The serum had saved Grixanth, but it was only the first step. The beast's body needed time to heal, and Alara needed to ensure that no remnants of the parasite remained. She also had to account for the possibility of the parasite's reactivation or mutation, which could undo all of their work in an instant. Javik handed her a data tablet, its surface glowing with complex readouts in the Zilktor language. "The Queen wishes to know your prognosis, human," he communicated, his tone devoid of emotion but carrying the weight of the unspoken question. "Will the creature live?" Alara studied the data, her mind parsing the alien symbols with the help of a translator implant she had been given upon arrival. The beast's vital signs were stabilizing, its immune system slowly regaining strength. But the damage was extensive, and the road to recovery would be long and fraught with risks. She looked up at Javik, meeting his piercing blue eyes. "Grixanth is out of immediate danger, but the damage is severe. The parasite has weakened its immune system and caused significant tissue damage. We'll need to monitor it closely for signs of infection or relapse. It's going to be a slow recovery, but I believe it will survive." Javik nodded, his expression unreadable. "The Queen will be pleased with this news, but she will expect results, not just promises. The survival of Grixanth is paramount to her and to our people." Alara nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. The Queen's expectations were clear, and there was no room for error. Failure, even at this stage, was not an option. But despite the pressure, Alara felt a renewed sense of determination. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let Grixanth or the Zilktor down. As she continued her work, Alara found herself thinking about the Drakthir. The parasite they had created was more than just a weapon. It was a statement, a declaration of their intent to destroy the Zilktor by targeting their most sacred and powerful symbols. The fact that the Zilktor's technology had been powerless against it was a chilling reminder of the Drakthir's cunning and ruthlessness. Alara knew that the Zilktor would not take this attack lightly. They were a proud and powerful species, and an assault on one of their sacred beasts was an assault on their very identity. The Queen had already shown that she was willing to go to great lengths to protect what was hers, and Alara suspected that there would be repercussions for the Drakthir once Grixanth was safe. But for now, all of that was secondary. Her primary concern was ensuring that Grixanth made a full recovery. She spent the next several days in a constant state of vigilance, monitoring the beast's condition and adjusting the treatment as needed. The Zilktor's technology allowed her to work with a level of precision that would have been impossible on Earth, but it also presented its own set of challenges. The alien devices were powerful, but they were also unfamiliar, and Alara had to rely on Javik's guidance to use them effectively. As the days passed, Alara began to notice subtle changes in Grixanth's condition. The creature's breathing became stronger, its eyes clearer, and the dark pallor that had settled over its scales began to fade. The serum she had created was doing its job, But Alara knew that the real test would come when they began to wean Grixanth off the medical support systems. The beast would need to regain its strength on its own, without the aid of technology, if it was to truly recover. One evening, as Alara was preparing a nutrient solution to inject into Grixanth's system, the queen entered the chamber. Her presence was as imposing as ever, but there was a softness in her gaze that Alara hadn't seen before. "Human," the queen's voice echoed in Alara's mind, the telepathic connection as strong as ever. "I have been informed of the progress you have made. Grixanth shows signs of improvement." Alara looked up from her work, meeting the queen's gaze. "Yes, your majesty. The serum is working and Grixanth is regaining strength. But it will be a long recovery. We still need to be cautious." The queen nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You have done well, Alara Vale. Far better than we expected. Your methods, though primitive by our standards, have proven effective where ours have failed. For that, you have our gratitude." Alara was taken aback by the queen's words. Gratitude from a being as powerful as the Zilktor queen was no small thing, and Alara felt a swell of pride, but she also knew that there was still much work to be done. "Thank you, your majesty, but the real challenge is yet to come. Grixanth will need to regain its strength naturally, without the aid of our technology. That's when we'll see if the treatment has truly succeeded." The queen regarded Alara with an unreadable expression. "I trust that you will do whatever is necessary to ensure Grixanth's recovery. This creature is more than just a guardian. It is a symbol of our people's strength and resilience. Its survival is tied to our own." Alara nodded, understanding the weight of the queen's words. She had always known that Grixanth was important, but she was beginning to grasp just how deeply the beast's survival was intertwined with the Zilktor's identity. The queen's people were watching, and they would not tolerate failure. With a final nod, the queen turned and left the chamber, leaving Alara alone with her thoughts and the slumbering beast. Over the next few days, Alara and Javik worked tirelessly to stabilize Grixanth's condition. They began to reduce the creature's reliance on the medical support systems, slowly reintroducing natural stimuli to encourage its body to heal itself. It was a delicate process, one that required constant vigilance and precise adjustments. As they worked, Alara and Javik began to develop a mutual respect. Despite the vast differences between their species, they were united in their goal of saving Grixanth. Javik's knowledge of Zilktor biology and technology complemented Alara's understanding of Earth-based medicine, and together they formed a formidable team. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Grixanth took its first unassisted breath. The creature's chest rose and fell steadily, its breathing strong and even. Alara watched in awe as the beast's eyes opened, clear and focused for the first time since she had arrived on Zycon 4. "It's working," Alara whispered, her voice filled with relief and amazement. "Grixanth is recovering." Javik nodded, his expression finally showing a hint of emotion. "You have done it, Alara Vale. The beast is healing." Alara couldn't help but smile. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but they had succeeded. Grixanth was on the road to recovery, and with it, the hope of the Zilktor people. As the days passed, Grixanth grew stronger, its body regaining the power and grace that had been sapped by the parasite. The creature began to move on its own, testing its limbs and stretching its wings. The dark pallor that had once covered its scales was gone, replaced by a vibrant iridescent sheen. The queen visited the chamber frequently, her presence a constant reminder of the importance of their work. But there was a change in her demeanor, a softness, a warmth that hadn't been there before. She spoke to Alara less as a superior and more as an equal, acknowledging the human's role in saving one of the most important beings in the Zilktor hierarchy. One evening, as Alara was preparing to leave the chamber for some much-needed rest, the queen approached her. "Alara Vale," the queen's voice echoed in her mind, but this time it was gentle, almost reverent. "You have done more than save a life. You have shown us that even the smallest, most unlikely of allies can be our greatest strength. For that, we owe you a debt that cannot be repaid." Alara looked up at the queen, her exhaustion forgotten in the face of such words. "It was an honor, your majesty. Grixanth is a magnificent creature, and I'm grateful that I could help." The queen extended her hand, and in it was a small, intricately designed device. It glowed with a soft blue light, humming with a faint energy that Alara could feel even from a distance. "This is a token of our gratitude," the queen said. "It is a communicator, one that will allow you to contact us directly, should you ever need our assistance. You have proven yourself a friend to the Zilktor, and we do not forget our friends." Alara accepted the device, feeling the weight of its significance. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I'll keep it safe." The Queen nodded, her gaze lingering on Alara for a moment longer before she turned and left the chamber. As Alara watched the Queen leave, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had come to Zycon 4 as an outsider, an alien in a strange and dangerous world. But she had proven herself, not just as a veterinarian but as a healer, a problem solver, and a diplomat. She had earned the respect of a powerful and enigmatic species, and in doing so, had forged a bond that might one day shape the future of both their worlds. With a final glance at the now sleeping Grixanth, Alara turned and left the chamber, her mind filled with thoughts of home. The journey had been long, and the challenges had been great, but she had emerged victorious, and as she stepped out into the alien night, the stars of Zycon 4 twinkling above her, Alara knew that she was no longer just a veterinarian from Earth. She was something more, a healer of worlds, a bridge between species, and a guardian of life in all its forms. The night air was cool, and as Alara breathed it in, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had faced the impossible and had triumphed. And in the quiet of the Zilktor night, she allowed herself a moment to rest, knowing that whatever the future held, she was ready. The sun, or whatever passed for a sun on Zycon 4, cast long shadows across the crystalline landscape as Dr. Alara Vale made her way to the grand chamber one last time. Grixanth was fully awake now, its once dulled eyes sharp and intelligent as they followed her approach. The beast had regained its strength with remarkable speed, its iridescent scales shimmering in the ambient light, a testament to the resilience and power that had been restored. Alara couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as she walked across the chamber. Grixanth stood tall and majestic, its wings flexing with newfound energy, the dark pallor that had once tainted its scales now completely gone. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and Alara knew that it was due not just to her skill, but to the incredible bond that had formed between her, the beast, and the Zilktor. The Queen was already there, standing beside Grixanth, her regal form as imposing as ever, but with a noticeable softness in her demeanor. Her presence filled the room with an air of calm authority, and as Alara approached, the Queen turned to her, a rare smile touching her lips. "Grixanth is ready to be released from care," the Queen's voice echoed in Alara's mind, carrying a warmth that had been absent during their first encounter. "Thanks to you, it has returned to full health." Alara nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and satisfaction. "I'm glad to see Grixanth back to its full strength. It's a magnificent creature." The Queen stepped forward, her gaze locking onto Alara's. "You have done what no Zilktor or Drakthir could, saved the life of one of our most sacred beings. For this you have earned not only our gratitude but our respect. You have proven that even those from lesser developed worlds can achieve greatness." Alara smiled, humbled by the Queen's words. "It was an honor, Your Majesty. Grixanth's survival means a great deal to me as well. It's a symbol of what can be achieved when different species work together." The Queen inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the truth in Alara's words. "Indeed. Your actions have opened a new chapter in the relationship between our species. We Zilktor are proud, but we are not without the capacity to learn and grow. Your success has shown us that there is much to be gained from cooperation." The Queen's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alara understood that this was more than just a compliment. It was an invitation, an offer to bridge the gap between their worlds. The communicator the Queen had given her earlier was more than just a token of gratitude. It was a symbol of a potential alliance, a connection that could reshape the future of both Earth and Zycon 4. But before Alara could respond, Grixanth stepped forward, lowering its massive head until it was level with hers. The beast's eyes, now bright and clear, gazed at her with a depth of understanding that transcended words. Alara felt a wave of emotion wash over her, gratitude, respect, and something deeper, something that felt almost like kinship. Without thinking, Alara reached out and placed a hand on Grixanth's snout. The beast rumbled softly, a sound that resonated deep within her chest, and she knew that it was its way of saying goodbye. "You've been through a lot," Alara whispered, her voice filled with affection. "But you're strong. You'll be just fine." Grixanth let out another low rumble, its breath warm against Alara's skin. For a moment, the two of them stood there, connected in a way that defied the vast differences between their species. It was a moment of pure understanding, a silent promise that no matter where their paths led, they would always share this bond. The Queen watched the exchange in silence, her eyes reflecting a rare softness. When Grixanth finally lifted its head and stepped back, the queen turned to Alara. "It is time for you to return to your world," she said, her tone gentle. "But know this, Alara Vale, you will always have a place here among the Zilktor." Alara nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will carry this experience with me always, and if ever you need my help again, I'll be there." The queen extended her hand, and Alara took it, feeling the cool, smooth texture of the queen's skin against her own. It was a simple gesture, but one that carried immense significance. As they stood there, hand in hand, Alara knew that this was more than just a farewell. It was the beginning of something new, something that could change the course of history. The moment was interrupted by the sound of the transport pod arriving, its sleek metallic form materializing in the center of the chamber. The door slid open, revealing the familiar sterile interior that had brought Alara to this world in the first place. With a final nod to the queen, Alara turned and walked toward the pod. As she stepped inside, she glanced back at Grixanth one last time. The beast watched her with those intelligent eyes, and Alara felt a pang of sadness at the thought of leaving it behind. But she knew that it was where it belonged, among its own kind, in the world it had fought so hard to survive in. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, sealing her inside. The pod hummed to life, and Alara felt the familiar sensation of being pulled through space. This time, however, there was no fear, no uncertainty, only a sense of accomplishment and a quiet determination to see what the future would bring. The journey back to Earth was just as swift as the journey to Zycon 4 had been. Within minutes, the pod arrived at its destination, materializing outside Alara's clinic in the Colorado Rockies. The door slid open, and Alara stepped out, the cool mountain air greeting her like an old friend. The pod vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving no trace of the incredible adventure she had just experienced. The clinic stood quiet and serene, just as she had left it, as if nothing had changed. But Alara knew that everything had changed. As she walked toward the clinic, the communicator the queen had given her pulsed softly in her pocket, a constant reminder of the bond she had forged with the Zilktor. Alara paused at the door, taking a deep breath and looking up at the night sky. The stars twinkled above, vast and unchanging, yet full of possibilities. Alara knew that her life would never be the same. She had traveled across the galaxy, faced impossible odds, and saved a creature that most would have deemed untreatable. She had earned the respect of an alien queen, and had forged a connection that could change the course of history. But for now, life would return to its quiet rhythm. There would be new challenges, new creatures to treat, and new mysteries to solve. And Alara was ready for all of it, with the knowledge that she had saved the life of the alien queen's beast and secured peace between two very different worlds. As she stepped inside the clinic, the door closing behind her with a soft click, Alara couldn't help but smile. The adventure was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning, and she was ready for whatever the future held.